or Scott will have it on the website later today. So not to dwell on that so much right now, but I will just simply say this. You've heard of the mention of the Anakims, the giants of the Anakims. But there was also another branch of giants called the Emims mentioned in the Bible. And God actually went after the Emims himself and had them destroyed. But there was left behind the Anakims and some other branches of giants. And you'll see that in that study. But this is the condition of the world. Let me ask you again. Giants, the offspring of fallen angels, really? Is this the upside that those who indicted Paul and Silas, is this the good and the ideal, the upside of the world of life that we are turning down, that we are ruining? God never intended this. In verse 5, God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. No letting up. Just sitting around the fire and thinking, what can I do next? What wrong can I perpetrate next? Who can I rob? Who can I deceive? Who can I take advantage of? Only evil continually. And it's in this environment that God decides, I will flood the earth and wash it with water and start over. They've gone too far, too fast. About 1,000 years have transpired. Methuselah, over 900 years by the time of the flood. So a little over 1,000 years has transpired from Adam to Noah. And in that time, how long did it take sin to invade the nature of man? Remember, Adam and Eve's first son, a murderer. By the way, Jesus said of that incident, Satan, you are a liar and the father of lies. You were a liar in the beginning. He lied to Eve. And you were a murderer from the beginning. He moved Cain to kill his brother. So by the time of Noah, the world has had 1,000 years indulging evil, from the lying and the murdering in the garden all the way up through the days of Noah. You know, Jesus commented on another aspect of the days of Noah from Matthew and chapter 24 and verses 38 and 39. Jesus said this about Noah's day. As in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage. What Jesus is describing is life as it always goes. Just, like nothing is impending, nothing is going to change. It's just status quo, it's casual living. He's describing conditions right before the flood where people are not only indulging evil continually, but they're living casually in it as if there's no God, and there'll never be a day of accountability to that God. Jesus said this, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage, just family celebrations, just life as normal, right up until the day that Noah entered the ark. They did not know what was going to happen to them until the flood came and took them all away. They completely ignored the message of the righteous one of the day, of the warning. On your notes, you'll see this lack of response, this casual disregard, this lack of response to the impending doom of Noah's warning was upside down. It did not make sense. If someone would have run into the crowd outside the ark that was watching him build the ark, they hear his word of warning. If someone ran into the crowd screaming, there's an enemy army on the horizon, they would have frozen in fear and began running and screaming, some of them to hide, maybe some of them to grab a weapon, but they would have responded to that warning. How was what Noah was doing, how was that turning the world upside down? Upside down is when something happens that doesn't make sense. The response of the people to Noah's warning did not make sense. He was trying to turn the downside up. He was trying to take them from death to life. Do you know? That's exactly what God is doing with his people today, in our world today. We are the watchmen on the wall to our generation, not to the one before us and not to the one after us. We are accountable to the generation in which we live. We're the watchmen on the wall. Church, is there a message for you and me to pass on, even now, in this scary time? Is there a message that we are supposed to pass on? Our days today, like the days of Noah, are upside down. And you know, Jesus said they would be. Jesus literally said, the days at the end of time will be as the days of Noah. Every imagination of the thoughts of people, only evil continually. And living life casually as if there's no God and no accountability to him. Listen, this is a message that the world needs to hear, but it does not need to hear it in a scary presentation. Do you know why? Because they don't need to be told something they already sense. In the back of their minds, they don't keep it in the front because they shudder to think that there might be some connection of this worldwide plague to the way we were living before it. Look at your notes with me, please. Our days are upside down. We are traumatized by the toll coronavirus has taken on our world in the last 15 weeks. The first case occurred December 1st, but China covered that up and hid it until December 31st when they announced it to the world. In the last 15 weeks, it has scared the world to death. Nearly 3 million people have caught it in every country, it seems. And over 200,000 have died. The status quo of life, of our lives, it's no longer status quo. It has flipped. Our world right now is upside down. And it remains for the ones who have the light, the ones who have the torch, the flashlight. It remains for us to say to the world while it is down, take my hand and let me show you the way back up from this. Look at your notes. When you think about it, the human race has actually gotten better during this time, not worse. So actually, We did not flip upside down. We flipped downside up. People are loving and caring and thinking of others. And I submit to you this. Prior to this virus, our world was definitely upside down. It was rife with every opposite to God's intended order of life. Just as in the days of Noah, before the virus, we indulged every imagination of evil continually, and we lived casually in those indulgements. Most concerning is not so much the personal indulgence of things offensive to God. Most concerning was the mass indulgence we were seeing. Look at that next paragraph. Most concerning was the world watched love grow cold and hate rage like fire with no solution to stop it. We just sat behind the glass tubes in our living room and we saw it and we grimaced over it. But there was no solution. No one knew before Corona how to stop the anger, the angst, the rage, the hatred. We became enraged by those single individuals that would take hatred into hand and massacre a small group of people. But more than that, we've seen, before Corona, we've seen nations, ethnicities, self-righteous, self-justified people. We've seen militant, religious factions in the name of a God, in the name of God. We've seen these mass groups fanning hate flames unceasingly in our world. Before I go further as to our world being upside down just as the days of Noah, let me just ask, hey, where is all that violence now? Where is all that hatred now? Corona. Think about it. Unfortunately, this next section of the way, what have we seen, what did we see in our world, in our culture before Corona? The love of money was fueling the flame. The love of money was growing shoots out of its root. Look at your notes there. These shoots of evil coming out of the root of the love of money produced every imaginable expression of greed that you can think of. For profit, we sold drugs, we sold weapons, we sold women, we sold children. For what? Profit, greed, self-exaltation. People have formed businesses of greed, businesses of profit, with every vice they can find to sell. They've organized into cartels, gangs so large and well-equipped with weapons that even the police forces and military of the countries in which they live won't take them on. These cartels will annihilate any who compete or interfere with them and their voracious appetite for money. As the frightened masses of victims fled for safety, such as those masses all through Central America and up through Mexico, as they fled for safety from these cartels, from these greedy human beings. We've seen it. It's been a part of our culture in the last few years. When they fled for safety, Did they mumble under their breath? But it's the Christians who are turning this world upside down, who are ruining everything. Do you see what I mean when I say we don't turn the world upside down? We turn the world downside up. It's the wickedness in the world that's turning it upside down. Since Corona arrived, we have been so busy battling evil, the evil of Corona, we've had no interest in indulging any other evil, personally or communally out in the community. Look, Miami just set a coronavirus record, a record that happened during coronavirus. Miami went 7 consecutive days without a single murder. Should we applaud or should we send notes of congratulations to the mayor? How did that happen? How did that reprieve come to happen? Coronavirus. By the way, them ceasing from killing one another, that's not normal. That's not upside down. When people quit killing one another, that's the downside coming up. And that's what Christians need to point out to the world at this time. In Miami, that's bad, getting better. In 2018, the world's top 10 cities with the highest murder rate killed a total of 13,424 people. That's just 10 cities. 10 cities in 1 year killed 13,500 people. Murder. The United States was not in the top 10. I think we were, I believe St. Louis was like 23rd, I believe. And then Baltimore was next, further down the list. But the U.S. was not in that top 10 list, but we can't brag. We have so many more people and so many more cities. Look at the total of murders in American cities in that same year. 15,498. Really? We murdered 15,000 people in 2018 in America's cities? But when Christians show up to call people out of that to love and peace and respect and a moral code of life, when we do that, we're turning the world upside down. We have a message that turns the world downside up, and it's time. Now is the time. Now is the day of salvation for this generation. We are the ones to proclaim, regardless of the consequences. The message is the truth. I don't think there's going to be, if we are faithful now, I don't think there's going to be a lot of kickback. And the reason is this: I believe people have an unnerving kind of suspicion that something was wrong with the way we were before Corona. And I think that the wave that we're seeing of people is an attempt for these people to find the good and the right. The ultimate downside up is this: when God looked down from his high vantage point at the world before Corona, what did he see? And what does he see now? I believe he's pleased with what he sees now. I believe he's pleased with the turn, with the shift. But I don't believe a moment of good is all he's looking for. I believe God is looking for sustained reversal. I believe he's looking for penitent hearts and changed lives. Not only to make our world a better place, but to usher a wave of humanity into that glorious future, eternal future of love, peace, and joy. I believe God wants to save souls. I believe it's going to start with saving us from the abyss. Let's face it, let's be honest, and I believe people have sensed it. We were too close to the precipice. No authority on earth seemed to have the solution or the answer to the violence and the hatred. And what do you do with immigrants that are trying to flood borders because they cannot live in the fear of the people behind them? And how do you solve these problems and issues? We know in the backs of our minds that we got too close to the precipice over the abyss. Do they know? Does the world now know it's time to turn it around? I think so. I think we may have an opportunity, what I call a once-in-a-generation opportunity, to reach people lovingly and guide them from the fear and the confusion into a way that they already presently suspect is the right way. You see, we have always had a message of genuine change, of human nature, of human life, of changing the culture, we've always had that message as a part of the philosophy of Christianity and its effect on the cultures of the world. We believe that genuine change begins as a birth from the inside out, not the outside in. Church, this world is going to try to fix itself after Corona from the outside in. We've got a message that says no, it starts from the inside out. If they accept that message, we may lead them into the safe harbor of God's love. This is not a time for people to run back to their old ways and bury the suspicion that we were wrong before Corona. We don't want them to get back to life as usual as in the days of Noah. We don't want them to get to a place where they're able to cover up and push back and avoid that sense that we need to make things right that were not right before Corona. This is not the time for Christians to leave the world lost in their attempt to find the long-term right. Now the world, on so many levels, sees the need for change. They have seen that the way things were was upside down. And I believe they have seen that the way things have been during the isolation of Corona is actually the downside up, the way things should be. I also believe Christians carry the truth for a sustained change in people's lives. Only changed people change the world. But shallow change means shallow results, temporary results. Through Jesus Christ, hearts are changed deeply, permanently. Lives are reborn. People are changed into a new and godlike creation. This is the message that has in the past and can still yet today slow the rush of self-destruction and usher in perhaps one last generation of good on earth. This is not a time for saints to be silent. Church, we cannot let this time pass let us look for every opportunity to convert a conversation about Corona to a conversation on Christ. And may God bless us for it.